Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the channel. This is Rob here at Smirking Gun, and today we're going to be talking about. Yeah, you clicked on the thumbnail, so you already know what we're talking about. Today we're talking about Severance. The new season starts. Was it January 17th of next month? I'm recording this. It's December 17th. Whoa, shit! A month, literally a month. Didn't know that. Didn't think about that when I was planning on doing this. But when January 17th rolls around, I'll be talking about Severance because Severance is one of the best shows I've ever seen in my life. And I've been talking about a lot of good shows with my friends lately, talking very recently about how I think The Americans is pretty much the best show ever made. And it's and it's a debatable thing, but I just in my brain I come to it like that. I'm like, as far as X, Y, and Z matters to me, there just really isn't any topping in it. Even though I love all of Breaking Bad and X Files and Better Call Saul and all this stuff. And then there's Severance, which is depending on how it all goes. Right now, it's for me like one of the best shows I've ever seen as well. And I was too late to the party for it. I just get that way. I could talk about it anytime I want. Sometimes I like to paint myself in these corners for myself just to force myself to make content. And seeing the trailer for season two and knowing I was going to want to talk about season two led me here to talking to you all right now. And at the very least, I'm recording this to at least give my 2 cents on at least the first episode. Whether or not I make any more of these is anybody's guess really, because I'm so up and down about making content and what I want to talk about and when and how I feel about it. Blah 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 blah. But since we're going to be talking about season two for sure, like every week, we're just going to see how this goes. So if you like that what we do here on the channel when I do make stuff, don't forget to hit like and subscribe, all that jazz. So, good news about hell is the first episode of Severance. This show that was created by Dan Erickson, who, had the idea. I mean, this is such a relatable show. I mean, a lot of the time when I think about my work life and my personal life, it's like, we spend our time dreading going back, and then we're there and we dread our time being there, but like there's part of our lives that's just kind of like when you get home, at least if you're I don't know, if you don't have a satisfying home life or outside life at all or whatever, you can end up going, man, I might as well be at work. But when you're at work, you're like, I might as well be at home. Like it's kind of this vicious cycle at times for at least some of us. And this show brings up all those kinds of topics mixed with this really creepy, culty. I don't even want to call it sci-fi. It feels sci-fi, but what I feel like is it's just a deeply psychologically fucked up thriller with a lot of really dark comedy and really human moments. Um, and I think it gets that sci-fi kind ofness to the mystery of it has this kind of like, I don't know. To me, it's more culty than sci-fi. I just can't explain it. Maybe because they're putting information in a computer and that makes it sci-fi. We don't know what that information means. But this, at least I should say, is like spoilers for at least the first episode and what I basically think of the show. Because I'm not going to talk about all of it um, unless when we start talking about season two, unless I do more of these anyway. But yeah, Dan Erickson created this show because of that, based off of that work and life, work life split. What if you could? And that's a very interesting topic that, really ethically, I don't even know, because it's you that does it to yourself. And in today's age, yeah, like we would be asking, well, how is it fair to you, the other you, that you're doing this to yourself? Now, here's how I kind of land on this is that the story makes it so that you can't remember anything about your outside life. And I feel like that little caveat gives this show a lot of leeway in like explaining a lot and why certain things are the way they are. Because if you actually went down there as yourself with, all right, sorry, there's a lot of noise in the apartment building today, apparently. Or at least I'm recording at a really inopportune time. Okay, so if you went down there with all your memories and you were there for 8 hours, and I guess like the excuse would be that if you're thinking about like how you don't want to be there, you wouldn't be very productive, would be the excuse, right? Of separating your work and life. But like, I kind of feel like by removing all your memories outside of being able to know like how to walk, things like that, like all the basic stuff you have to like know, and how they filter that out, God only knows. But it is a really interesting way to make it so that you're not asking questions, that you literally don't know anything, and you'll never know. Now, the circumstances that start to occur in this show crack that open, which is like, what if somebody got away from the company and got themselves on Severed so that they could start telling people, and in this case, Adam Scott's Mark S character, what's really going on down there? Why don't you remember all that stuff? Like, so, and as I keep going, it's like I start diving into the plot. Um, but Dan Erickson's concept, Ben Stiller, who, I mean, good lord. All right. So I've not been, my feelings about Ben Stiller stuff was like, he started out really strong. I personally still think that as dated as the Cable Guy can be and cheesy at times, like I think it's Jim Carrey's over the top performance really that I think, I mean, it's good and it's bad at the same time, but like I think the ideas that Ben Stiller was working with his show, with movies like The Cable Guy, were really great and ahead of their time. Really smart and dark stuff. And then, it just took a turn after There's Something About Mary, which was like a very funny and interesting and unique comedy, I think, for at least American audiences. But that sent him down this path of just the same kind of, I don't know, man, rom-com like purgatory for like a really long time. And yeah, he got to work with great people, but it was like whenever he would every once in a while make something that wasn't like in that wheelhouse, it was usually really good. Same thing with like how like Sandler is capable of like doing some really high quality stuff when he chooses to. But I knew that Ben Stiller, at least as a creative, was always really, really good. And with stuff like Tropic Thunder, but like movies like he was in like Zero Effect, or the one about oh man, I'm gonna be kicking myself for not remembering the one where he played. Oh my God, it's not. I'm thinking of Permanent Midnight. Movies like that. I never saw the the Walter Mitty movie. I should have. I don't know why I haven't. But I'm just really glad that like when I heard Ben Stiller was attached to this, that it was finally back into like, and even though he didn't write this, he didn't come up with the idea, but he's the one of the directors, one of the people behind it, and I think that his sensibilities are perfect for this kind of thing. Um, and then you have this cast that, I mean, Adam Scott's been great forever. Um, I could just list off everything that he's done. He's really good and just perfect for Mark S, especially coming off of roles like in Parks and Rec. Britt Lauer, who has I've like mostly I'd only seen her in commercials, but she always had this kind of way about her. I don't know if she was on Mad Men. she feels like somebody who must have been on Mad Men. She has that kind of air about her, but I was really happy to see her get this is big for her. And so it's so great that like her first really big role is something this good because I think she's somebody that's going to be really, really, really great in the for the rest of her career now that she's been able to break out of like commercials and stuff. John Turturro is always great. Patricia Arquette is. We're gonna talk more about them as we go along and as this, whatever. Patricia Arquette is so spooky as Miss Cobell slash Miss Selvig. Uh, Tromble Tillman is just perfectly cast as one of the. He's like the Nurse Ratchet of this show. Like he is. Uh, he's just this guy that you work with. Imagine like if you were really scared of like the office security guy, like actually scared of him, instead of like at your regular job you see the office security and you can just be like, yeah, it's just whatever. You know what I mean? Michael Chernus is also in this. I forget who plays his sister. I like her a lot. Um, I think it's Jen Tulloch. But we haven't seen Dyken. I'm probably massacring that name. Dakin Lockman and Christopher Walken's character. They haven't showed up yet, but freaking great cast. I'm forgetting Zach Cherry, who I shouldn't forget. But here's the thing about Zach Cherry. This is the first time I've liked one of his like roles, and I think it's because again everybody is perfectly cast in this. Zach Cherry has been a character actor for a while, doing kind of this normal shtick, and the shtick I guess I would say to like that would sum up like most of his career up to this point is if you remember him in the Shang-Chi movie, where he's the guy on the bus with his phone out recording like he's an influencer, that kind of character. He plays that a lot. Now imagine that's somebody that you had to work with every day. That's why he's perfectly cast. They're not really doing anything too far out of the realm of this guy's capabilities and what he's played in the past. Except then they actually do. Then they give this guy who is basically a cliche in everything I've seen him in, and then they turn that cliche into a well-rounded out character by the end of the first season. Same with everybody else. Same with Totoro and everybody as you. And it's what I love about these limited series or series that have a definitive kind of beginning, middle, and end, where they're able to go so character focused that people like. It's why I just prefer shows to movies nowadays because I'm a big character and story guy. So we got all these pieces together in this fantastic show because it also like the music by Theodore Shapiro, the theme song, everything that gives the vibes to this show, aesthetically, the sets and everything. I saying into myself that this makes me think of like Mad Men meets like as far as aesthetically, makes me think of Mad Men and The Prisoner. So many of the vibes and tones from the music and the sets in this just make me feel claustrophobic and trapped and lonely and small and like that like even when Mark is outside there's in some ways his life inside is better because there are actual people in there in it with him towards a goal with each other. On the outside he's somebody that did have those things but now as we see in the first episode he's crying and there's been a loss here, that they'll go into more and more, that we talk about his wife, all these little things that are dribbled out in this first episode is perfect. In fact, that's one of the other things about this. This is one of the most perfect first episodes because it's a big exposition dump, but it's how they give you the information that's unique to it. Everything that's happening in the story is happening so that we get the information we need, and they are able to do it in a way that we don't feel like we're being talked to about the plot. The plot is happening to someone. So in this case, it's Ellie R., played by Brett Lauer, who is the person on the table getting talked to by Mark. It's her introduction, it's her orientation. And through these scenes, we get to know so much with context of like what we're in for about this place. It's a big mystery what they do there. We're reacting, while we're sitting here watching it the same way she's reacting to it, throwing things. I mean, if it was me, if it was you, think about like how many of us would be trying to bash that door and how many people would be giving those speeches of like, I'll kill you. Come on, like it's actually, when I think about human behavior, it's one of the more rational things that would bring us all together is put us in a room where we don't know why we're there, we can't get out, and nobody's talking to us except for a disembodied voice. We'd all be freaking the fuck out. Then you've got like the scene with Helly where she's trying to leave. And I might as well just forget about structure to this and just talk about it the way I want to talk about it. Like when she wants to leave, this all sets up, like, okay, clearly she can't. Why? We find out because once you're out, it's your own decision that puts you back there. So then, like again, by not knowing and not having any of your memories, this makes it really easy to create that I hate myself for doing this to me. To what possibly reason could I have for doing this to myself, knowing that you're doing this to me? you know, Forcing it. That like, how can what must you think of yourself to do this to yourself? And how do you rise above that feeling? Because I know what it would do to me. It would drive me fucking insane. I would probably end up like, they'd go, look, this person, they'd have to tell my outie, like, you just can't handle it. You literally you never stop asking questions. I think somebody like me would never stop. And it would just be like, look, he's just not working. He's sitting in the corner picking at the carpet, okay, and just humming Radiohead songs to himself, all right? He can't be here. It is weird. Nobody else can work. We've tried everything. He is now just, yeah, Severance, I don't know. Just don't think it would be a good fit for me anyway. But for story-wise purposes, these people stay for whatever reason, and we get the plot as we go along, right? So, uh, but it is really, really, and while I had like all this stuff and then like this background noise just suddenly turned off. Okay, so then for the continuing, sorry, I was trying to think of the exposition moments here that were like important and how they use these scenes to give us, everything we need, things that we really need to know as a jumping on point for this show, whether it's going to work for you or not. And the other one is like the dinner party, where once he's out, right, we get to see him, because as much as everybody like loves seeing what's in there, a lot of people are like, there's not enough. I was talking to somebody who thought that there wasn't enough moments outside of Severance. And I said, well, when you're first starting out one of these kind of, a show, you want to establish, your world, the rules of your world, the characters in it, where they're going, where they're headed. And how important is the outside world compared to the Severance world? Severance world is the big mystery world. So that's where you want to spend most of your time, at least in your first season, setting everything up. Because that's how you ask, you get all the questions asked, is in this big old mystery box. On the outside, those are the people that have to solve that mystery. So they get less time to figure things out. Because first we have to like the people in the situation that they're in at Severance before we can really want them to get out. And then once we start to know the people on the outside, that'll even compound even more how much we want those people out. That's just good storytelling. But at the dinner party, it's really great because now we've seen how things operate in the offices with like Patricia Arquette's character, how it can all of a sudden be very corporate, and make in this place of mystery with no memories, she can still be that kind of boss that suddenly tears you down for no reason. He doesn't understand what she's yelling at him for, but not really if you look at it. He just thinks I've done something wrong, and she's just pissy and not putting on a performance either. This lady's performance in this, like as a dual person, is almost like she really is like two people. Like maybe they gave her an extra thing so that she can have both memories happening simultaneously. I don't know. That's crazy. I don't know if anybody's ever thought of that idea for this show. But so we have all that set up. So now he's out, and we get to see now like what the average person in the world thinks about Severance through this dinner party. And it's a very a liberal dinner. They're all talking about certain things, and this is where I'll stand on one thing about like how I feel, because I'm a progressive thinking person. I'm definitely not MAGA. All right. I vote Democrat because they're the ones that aren't trying to take away people's rights. That's how I land on things. Um, but at this dinner, it is the most pretentious. That doesn't mean that just because I go progressive doesn't mean I don't recognize pretentious, liberal, just flapping mouths. Like knowing things, being right, saying things that are right, and knowing certain things are right isn't doing anything about it. And it's just like this room full of people that have all the answers, right? And they know all the things that are right and wrong. And they may be right and they might know all the things that are wrong. But just complaining, like I said, just complaining and knowing these things and being like, oh, yes, I support this. And yes, I do this with it and all that is not actually doing things for anybody. You just like to hear yourself talk and smell your own farts. Okay. And that's what, like it definitely comes across that way. And I think it's not subtle, and I don't think it's trying to be. And it's trying to hold up a mirror to that way of thinking. But it also is like, who would be, when you bring up the thought of severance and what you're doing? Like, this is the PC table, right? This is the politically correct dinner party. So, how they're seeing it is actually correct, though. Like, haven't you ever thought about the people that you're doing this to down there? It's a way to get that across in the show. Um, Knowing that most people think poorly of it because you're basically trapping a version of yourself down there. And that's just another way of good exposition for a first episode. Now you get into like the whole meat of the whole thing and what's going on down there in Severance, right? I mean, these 5 questions that they ask are basically baselines to know like how good the process worked, I think, because they're not trying to, these 5 questions aren't there to make sure that you're completely a blank. It's make sure that there's just certain things that you can't access, and it's just kind of terrifying because he can say, who are you, like what's your name? You don't know. You need them to tell you. Okay, they at least tell you your first name. They at least don't lie to you about that. What state are you born in? Don't really need to know it. Do you know any state? She knows that. She calls out Delaware. So she knows what the states are. She just, it's like knowing things. It's the difference between knowing things and being able to put personal context to it. Because then they're like, well, what did Mr. Eagers want for breakfast? And she's like, who? And he's like, exactly. You don't even know this person. And then what's the color of your mother's eyes? And this is where it does get personal because they don't want you. This is like one, they want to make sure. Now, I don't even know the color of my mother's eyes. I want to say they're grayish, green. That's like from a million years ago, and I am just guessing. But I think for a lot of other people, that is a question that would get them. And it's heartbreaking because it's not just that you don't have memories, but that you don't have the memories of like having a mom, having the memories of looking into your mom's eyes. Just being that blank would be terrifying and sad and lonely. And when I was watching this part, I was just like, man, this show, like, even if if this show could have a bunch of scenes that were out of order that I would have to put together in some kind of weird ass puzzle, like a bunch of vignettes that aren't really, maybe tell a story in some fashion over the course of an hour, and that would take even more work. But I would watch it even in that fashion. If this was just a show to put together completely, I would still be here for it. Um, Now we also got to think about like why are they there, right? Mark's in his car crying. We get to see that. So when he gets there, and then after seeing like how his life is outside of work, like work is his escape. It's just that he doesn't even know it. I mean, at work, he has a best friend. That's the stuff that happens at the end of this episode where Petey shows up while he's talking to Mrs. Selvig slash Mrs. Kogel, who is like totally spying on this guy. Um, if you think about like what they're talking about, they're talking about like questioning the Lumen Industries and what they're doing there. But in that conversation, and as he says, like, I'm your best friend, you realize that his life down there might be like this trapped place, but like he has a life down there. He has friends down there. He has people that he would do things for down there. Up there, what does he have? He has his sister, and it's a really great relationship. I really like seeing uh, brothers and sisters that feel like brothers and sisters. I was thinking the other one that of recent years that really stuck out was Carrie Coon and Ben Affleck's brother sister relationship in Gone Girl. Feels kind of like that. Um, but what's Helly's reason for being down there? Why is it? Why won't her other self let her out? Like the way that she's doing it, back and forth and back and forth. We don't know enough about Irving, or I forget Zach Cherry's character's name right now. We don't know like what their backstory is yet, but we will get to it. Now, the things that I love, let's talk about like the job itself, because so much of this does, if you've had any kind of job with a corporation, a lot of these things will hit home. Like, well, first off, I just love the maze to the office, that somehow he doesn't have any memories from outside, but he can be like the mouse trapped in the maze. Like, oh, like, and I haven't even discussed like what I think is going on, and that's not even for this episode. I mean, because when you talk about the mouse in the maze part, I mean, that says so much of like it does feel like they are just like somehow rats in just an experimental maze. But when they talk about things like the waffle party or incentivized creamer, like all the little bullshit perks that a job will come up with to make you think that like it's not so bad. We're not like in jail. We Jail doesn't pay this well, except these days. Um, but it is like such a great reflection of like how corporate America or any kind of like company that has enough employees where they try to do things that are supposed to make you feel better and they never do. It is like the weakest shit. And it almost actually brings more people together in their anger towards them trying than if they didn't try anything at all. I mean, both causes eventual dissent, but I mean, like asking the question, like, what are her question saying? Am I livestock? I mean, that's a question that I feel like a lot of people have had to ask over the course of their working life. Am I just here? Like, I mean, she's asking if you were raised me to be eaten, but I think in a more like metaphorical sense, asking if we're all just livestock is, I mean, we're all a bunch of decimal points. I know that. I mean, the way that they give him a gift card and lie about how he got hurt at work. And it's just for some shitty little local place that even his sister's like, oh, of course it's that place. And they lie about that. And We also know in this episode that there are congressional hearings that are going on about this. Yeah, I love how they're like, I stand behind Mark. We all stand behind you, right? But PD shows up at Mark's sister's house, and he had help getting unsevered. Now, he doesn't look great, and he says that they're on their way to him, which also sets up a lot of the paranoia that is going to be on the outside as far as Mark goes. Um, because then when you realize that his next door neighbor is Mrs. Coble slash Mrs. Selvig, played by Patricia Arquette, and she is more creepy here than anywhere. And at least Mark on the outside understands that she's creepy. Mark on the inside is afraid of her. Mark on the inside, she has real control over. And it kind of feels like, she really keeps an eye on him. Maybe she knows like how potentially he's whatever, but like, because when she says you're good people, it just sounds bad. It sounds worse. And we all, PD does give him the card where he could start down this road of mystery. Now, if we wouldn't have a show if he doesn't eventually go down this, but I mean, it would be kind of interesting if we just threw it away. But and since a billion other people have talked about this show, already, this is me, the last person finally talking about it, and not expecting a whole lot of traction for it. But I just want to make sure that I absolutely said something about this show because it's gonna get crazier and crazier. And maybe if more people want me to do more of these, I'll give it a shot. Maybe if I feel like it. I'm striking while the iron is hot. So I know that I haven't gone over every little moment and scene, but that's where you guys can come in and let me know about all the things that you like about this show or could think it could do better. Or what do you think is going to get better? Because in the world of macro data refinement, whatever the fuck that means, we can come up with all kinds of theories of what's going on. Because I mean, again, I think that it's Britt Lauer is so good in this. I can't again stress enough how good everybody is, but she is so good in this. That whole sequence, as she fights and fights and fights to get out of this thing, I just love it. I love it so much. And that's where I'm gonna just leave because I have a hard time figuring out how to end these things when I start to ramble. So anyway, like and subscribe, all that jazz. If you want more of these, let me know in the comment section. And yeah, maybe we'll be back with more of this. I'll see ya. Bye.